Welcome to Your Family Dog, a podcast dedicated to helping families love living with dogs.
Hi, welcome back to Your Family Dog. I'm Julie Fudge Smith, and I'm here with Tina Spring. And today we're going to talk about a topic that's near and dear to many people's hearts, which is I have a barking dog. And in fact, as Tina and I were preparing for this very podcast, her dog barked, my dog heard it, and she started barking. So it's a problem that exists not just in the general public, but we trainers need to deal with issues with our own dogs as well. So that was pretty funny. It was kind of right on target, so to speak. So it kind of got sparked by a client I was talking to this week who said, I have this 11-month-old dachshund, and this dachshund just barks at everything. It could be, an imaginary leaf falls in the yard. My neighbor wakes up. Whatever it is, the dog seems to find this necessity for barking, whether, anybody else can perceive it or not. It doesn't matter. We're talking all the time. She said, and my neighbors are beginning to resent it. So, because she likes to spend a lot of time out on her porch, her screened-in porch, and the random leaf falling and the person who may or may not exist, causing the dog to bark, is causing some problems. So, Tina, what would you tell somebody whose dog is sort of hypervigilant to sounds and noises? Well, sounds are noises, aren't they? Movement, whatever, seems to always need to necessitate telling you about everything that's going on in the environment.
So I have you gave a whole bunch of really great information to what might be going on, right? Because I think dogs bark for all different reasons,
yep.
Right? We could be barking because we're actually afraid, right? We're trying to answer all of the emails, even the ones that are spam. So sometimes I think dogs are just overwhelmed, and so they alarm bark. They're siren barking. They're letting you know, there be dragons in the woods. I absolutely do think adolescent dogs
yes.
do a lot of negative attention-seeking barking, right? And then I also think, and not everybody's going to love this, but breed matters, right? Hounds, their job is to alert you. It's your job to take care of the problem. So I think that enters into it too, right?
I would agree. I think about, like beagles. I love beagles. I love beagles in class. I love other people's beagles. But the because I see something, is not something that I personally want to live with on a daily basis. But that's part of being a beagle.
Well, so it is, but it isn't. I mean, I think, especially maybe I'm sensitive to it because my parents have been breeding and showing dogs for basically, 40 years. But I don't actually, I think that breed tendencies inform stuff, but I also think people use it as an excuse too, right?
That's true. That's true.
That it's a beagle, so it pulls on leash. Well, I'm sorry, but I've actually owned a beagle who walked politely on a leash. It might be a little bit more difficult to teach, but well worth the effort, right? So there are all sorts of things that humans do naturally that we put under stimulus control. And I think the same can be true for dogs. I think teaching dogs discernment, that there's a time to do this and there's a time that's not appropriate. Actually, I think Colleen said it to me once, and it was like one of my favorite. Maybe it wasn't her. It sounds naughty, but someone said to me, I think it was Colleen, that everyone has a list of you're not allowed to poop on the dining room table. That's kind of the human condition. No pooping, no eliminating on the dining room table. So if we can draw a line about that, a natural behavior, pooping, something a dog must do, if we could put that under stimulus control, certainly we can say when you are in the backyard, there should actually be a good reason to bark. There are other things that we do in the backyard, and just teach the dog that. It's just one of those things that I think sometimes we go, oh, but it's the breed, and so that's a kind of a cop-out. We don't have to actually work on it.
Right. But that doesn't mean to say that it's not harder. If you have a breed that's more inclined in that direction, like, hounds, that's what hounds kind of do. And so that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Terriers are also more on alert, I think. And so I think some of these things
my terriers have all been quiet, right? Well, like my terriers, if they were barking, there was a reason to be barking. So... Good. And believe me, like the cobbler's kids have no shoes. I mean, you just heard my dog, negative attention barking, going, "Hey, you're on the phone without me. How dare you?" in the hallway, and we passed it to, where are you, Ohio, right? So, my dogs get the leftovers of my time and energy.
That's what I tell people too. That my clients' dogs are exceptionally well behaved. My dogs, good enough.
Right, like
we reside in the area of good enough.
I don't get to do recreational dog training. So, but one of my favorite, I was telling this story on Saturday to some people who have hounds. And so I said, one of the favorite calls I ever got was, I think I had a client who was due to deliver. So my phone was next to me in bed, where typically it isn't. And I got a call at like 3 or 3:30 in the morning, where as I was answering, you could hear the hound barking. And like I'm like, hello? Right. But I kind of sort of know who it is. It's Buckets. It's Buckets, the blue ticoon hound. That's who that is. And so the owner, the mom, is all frustrated and is like, he won't stop barking. I've been yelling at him for an hour. And I'm like, okay, well, so you're both barking. Okay. And so I said, go grab a flashlight and head out onto the back porch. And I said, what? And she's like arguing with me. I'm like, grab a flashlight, go out on the back porch, find the tree that he's barking at, point it at the bark, at the trunk of the tree, slowly work your way up the tree until you find whatever it is he's barking at. And so she's like complaining, but is going up the tree. And all of a sudden she goes, oh. I said, is it a possum or a raccoon? She goes, it's a possum. I said, okay, turn to Buck and say, thanks, bud, I got it. And she's like, ah. And I'm like, just tell Buck, you've got it. Like, yes, I see the possum. Good dog. And she finally did it. And Buck just went, okay, good. And went in the house and went to sleep, bleary-eyed, because he'd been barking for an hour. So I think sometimes from our sweet dog's perspective, they are doing their job. I am alerting you to a situation. Right. And we're like, shut up, stop telling me. And it's like, okay, well, so this happened to our family. We were at my grandmother's and we had Doberman pinchers and they're all barking in the middle of the night. My mother in a stage whisper is shouting to them to stop barking. And she finally got up after a while and the church behind my grandmother's house was on fire.
Oh my.
So good that the dogs were persistent. I think sometimes I get families who are angry that the dog is doing the dog's job. Now, does nuisance barking exist? Oh, you betcha. And that's a totally different deal.
Right. And I think that's what my client was talking about. And she doesn't mind if her dogs alert her. Like if somebody's at the door and they bark, or there is a deer or a raccoon or something in the backyard. Those are not the things she objects to. What she objects to is the fact that she's sitting out there having a cup of coffee and a leaf falls and the dog loses it. So
right.
That is, that's really the issue. And I think that's what most people... And I always find, too, when I point out to somebody, well, maybe, like you said, like with Buck, if there's something really going on, that's a real learning experience for a lot of owners. Then they feel quite chagrined that they have now done this. I've now, been really annoyed with my dog when actually there was a reason for it. I find that sometimes opens a lot of doors for some new realizations. Like, maybe I need to investigate. And let's start to figure out what the real barking is and what the nuisance barking is.
Right. And sometimes that is a fuzzy line. Yeah. Right. I have 2 dogs from Turks and Caicos. For them, things that the average U.S. dog would view as really benign and normal in the environment is a 911 for them. It is a sliding scale.
Right.
So, I think there is a little bit of having to be fair from that perspective as well, that what I might perceive as nuisance barking might actually be that the dog is concerned, struggling with stimuli, and that it needs to go on my list of stuff to help them with and help them navigate. Right. So if your question is about nuisance barking, which it sounds like it is, I have a couple of thoughts. So one, has your client taught the dog what being in the backyard is for, right? Like, if there's not been any enrichment in the backyard, if the dog is just, we're expecting the dog, an 11-month-old dachshund, like, oh, for goodness sakes, like, it's a tiny little German in the backyard, right? They need something to do, right? So if we've already gone, well, you're not allowed to eat all the acorns and you're not allowed to dig holes. I'm thinking of all the dachshund things. And you're not allowed to bark. Well, then what the hell's left, right? Like, I'm a dachshund. So I might start doing some enrichment. And that can be as complicated or as simple as a family might want it to be. So it could be taking the dog's breakfast and broadcasting it like they're feeding the chickens, sending the doxie out to hunt up his breakfast while she's drinking her coffee in the morning, right? Just give the dog something else to do. If the idea of your dog eating off dirt is horrifying to you, then potentially something like a Kong wobbler. Right. Or maybe you engage the dog in a game of fetch, right? The average dachshund would like to run 18 miles a day playing fetch. So maybe we preempt the barking with, hey, we're going to do this other thing that's way more fun and rewarding. Hide and go seek, right? That's a great one. So maybe I hide your Kongs. Your breakfast is split into 6 Kongs that are frozen and hidden in the backyard, and you have to go find them. Or even kind of the special toy thing, like the toy that the dog doesn't get all the time. So maybe he enjoys a nice bully stick in the morning while you're caffeinating. But I would also
my
say,
dogs would be so fat because I have to caffeinate for a very long time. And
I find the older I get, the more I require caffeination. So you'll laugh. That does bring up a thing, right? Like, if your dog is in good weight, then adjusting to do all these things is really easy. Right. If your dog is obese, well, then we're causing a whole different set of issues that are expensive and complicated and uncomfortable.
Right.
I do an exercise just teaching dogs how to hang out. And so some people would do that with a settle mat. I do it with a leash and might eventually run a mat into it. But there is a little bit of teach the dog what you want them to do instead of arguing over squirrel farts.
Right.
And I will also say, like, okay, if you're not enjoying it, if your neighbor's not enjoying it, right, if we've gotten to the point that we're making the neighbors angry, his butt would be. What I'm not going to do is stay in the backyard, not enjoying my coffee, arguing with the dog and making my neighbor mad.
Right. And that's one thing I did say to her. I said, if indeed you're finding that it's one bark and we settle down, that's one thing. But it's a whole nother thing if we have 1 bark and then we have 2 barks and we have 3 barks and then we start escalating. And if that's the pattern you see emerging, you need to cut it off after the first bark. Either redirect to something else, or let's go inside and go in our crate, or go in the bathroom and close the door or something. And so the timeout doesn't have to be for long, but it has to happen in order for the dog to learn this. If I act this way. Now, you're right, though. I do like the point that sometimes it does need to be for an extended period of time because the dog does need some rest. Most people don't understand that the dog needs to sleep about 17 hours a day. And the reason behind that is because dogs don't have the same kind of, they do have REM sleep, but they don't have the same kind of sleep cycles that we have where they go into the really deep sleep. So therefore they need more sleep because they don't have the same kind of deep sleep patterns that we have. So yeah, maybe your dog, like your toddler, just really needs a nap before we get, we're so overstimulated and I need to sort of keep myself going. One of the things I did want to mention was we did a podcast called The Funnel of Activity. And that relates to something that you were talking about, which is in the funnel of activities, is you take care of everything the dog needs in order to teach him to settle. So you do some aerobic activity. You play fetch, you chase a ball, you run around, you have big aerobic activity. Then you do something for mental stimulation, maybe some training, maybe a more difficult food toy than just a Kong. And then you do some deep tissue massage to get the dog to kind of unwind. And then you give him a nice stuffed Kong to settle down with. So something like that may help as well, because it teaches the dog that we get rid of your energy, we take care of your mental stimulation, we give you a chance to get all the kinks out, and then we settle down with a Kong and go to sleep.
Yeah, but I mean, a big thing I see is adolescent dogs who are like, if I stop moving, I'm going to fall asleep and miss something. So I must bark and run around like a lunatic.
That's right. It's kind of like they have, what is it, fear?
And so
FOMO,
I
fear
do
of missing
a lot
out.
of management. I do a lot of, okay, you're going to be on a leash tied to my chair. We're not barking all morning.
Yeah.
Right? Like teaching them. So I'm Catholic, right? So I think of it like Stations of the Cross.
Yeah.
When I am in my office and recording a podcast, this is what the dog should be doing. Like there's a list. Like here are the list of activities that are appropriate for the quadruped. Pick from that list, or I will pick for you. I will say, to be completely fair, like I'm 50 almost. I'll be 50 in January. I don't have 4 little kids. I don't have a corporate job. We have adult dogs, right? Like there's, I think sometimes dog trainers' answers are like, become a dog trainer. And for the average family, they just wanted to drink their coffee. Yeah. So while I love and I agree, like, yes, did the dog get aerobic exercise, and did they get good nutrition, and did they get this and that? I'm also like, and stick a thunder shirt on them and activate that parasympathetic nervous system. And lazy dog training is still dog training, right? So, because I do see dogs that their owners are just entertaining them all day. And I don't know, that's a lot. That's more than the average family with 2 kids wants to have to do.
Absolutely. And I tell people, I said, I'm not a particularly great trainer. I'm somewhat of a lazy trainer. So I'm always trying to find the way that, how can I do this with the least amount of effort? Because
like if I put you on a leash and tie you to my file cabinet with a dog bed and a bony to chew on, I have limited your opportunities to go bark out the front of the house. And at the same time, I am getting other things done, and you are learning what to do. And people are funny. They're like, well, when do you get rid of the leash in the process? I'm like, when the dog goes and assumes the position and does the right things and I forget. Yeah. And then one day I'm like, it's been like 6 weeks since I put the leash on the dog at this spot. So he must have it figured out, right? Like I just think there's like, how do you know when to take the training wheels off the bicycle? Well, when the child doesn't bump into them for a while.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the training that I do is probably starts with management.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to use a whole bunch of punishment. I don't want to be saying no, 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 no all the time.
Right. And that's one of the things that when I'm talking to people, we have a podcast on this as well, is we talk about management, relationship, and training. We could train a particular behavior, but it's going to take a long time and a lot of effort when, a gate manages the situation beautifully. And the fact is I tell people, I said, believe it or not, your dog does not actually have to meet everyone who comes to your front door.
What?
My
dogs don't meet anyone who comes to the front door.
You can be in my office behind a gate with a chewy or, a toy or doing something else. You don't have to help the guy repair the oven. In fact, I don't think you actually will be helpful to him, believe it or not.
Well, and it's also not really honoring that guy. He's probably kind of uncomfortable about dogs, right? He's there to do his work. It's, I think sometimes, there's this, so I talk about it in my group classes, like week 4 is when we start talking about management. Because if I try to talk about it week 1, they're like, no, I'm taking a dog training class and I will be training my dog and it's going to be fun and exciting. And then, by week 4, they're like, okay, talk to us about management because it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I oftentimes will come up with a management solution. And what happens with a good management solution as well?
It is training.
It is training. That's exactly what I was going to say. That it may not be, clicking and treating for every, modicum of behavior. But on the other hand, it really is training. If you're consistent and you're kind, and it will work. And management can really be your best friend. And I find it's particularly useful for families that have little kids, because oftentimes one of the things that we really need to do is we need to manage not just the dog, but actually we have to manage some little people too. So gates and crates are really helpful because it gives the dog the time and the space it needs away from prying fingers, little prying fingers.
Yeah.
And so
right.
it's
I don't know.
Kids
break stuff. Kids get angry. Yeah. Adults break stuff. Adults get angry. Like, we spill stuff. We break stuff. Like, we barf. Right? Like, having lots of options that the dog knows how to do and is comfortable with for when they're not sure what to do with themselves is totally a win.
Yes.
So, I just think that one of the ways I can bless a family is to talk about, okay, if you think of the routines of your day, which are going to be different than the routines of my day to a certain extent, what are 3 to 5 different options on your dog's flow chart? And ideally, by the time your dog is an adult, you have maybe 10 options on the flow chart. But for most families, the dog can go in a crate, the dog can be on a leash, maybe the dog can be in a fenced yard. There's 3, right? I can add a tether in the house, that's 4. I can add a gate, that's 5. I can do a puppy playpen, that's 6, right? So I can just have, if I teach the settle mat, woohoo, now I don't have equipment in the house, I just have a mat there.
Right.
So just, and thinking about educating their dog more in terms of, it makes the flow chart bigger.
Right. Well, the other thing I also try to do is say, okay, let's really prioritize what's important to you. Okay.
Right.
So one of the things is I had, actually it was my daughter's client. She has somebody who said the thing that is absolutely most important to me is that when somebody comes to the door, the dog goes to his mat. That's the one thing I want more than anything else. So that's what they worked on. And by golly, that dog, anybody if somebody looked at the front door, the dog ran basically to his mat and settled down. But, I also think it's important, too, to know where to focus your training. Where can we use a management solution? Because that's all I really need. And where is it that you really want to focus your training because it's important to you that you have a dog trained in that particular way? So with them, it was go to my mat when somebody's at the door. And that's what they worked on. And they were happy as all get out because that was a really effective management tool for them. And so then she could also say at other times, go to your mat, and the dog would run and lay down on its mat. So for her, that was the single most important management or training tool she could have for her dog, she felt, to keep it safe and keep her kids and everybody coming to her house safe. But for other people,
I really like sequencing, right? Like, I like teaching people kind of that magic of giving the dog an environmental cue that gives them information what to do, right? So if you think about it with kids when they're little, we're strapping them into the car, we're putting the seatbelt on, we're doing all those pieces. But over time, get in the car includes sit in your seat, keep your hands to yourself, put your seatbelt on, right? Don't kick the seat. Like, it starts to mean a bigger thing.
Right.
And honestly, my experience is the dogs figure that stuff out really quickly and are empowered by it. So,
right.
If someone, when I had well-trained dogs, when I had well-trained dogs, if somebody rang the doorbell or knocked, that was a signal to the dogs to go to their crate. Because you cannot actually, maybe you could answer the dog door with 9 dogs behind you, but that's off-putting to some people.
Yeah, so, not only off-putting, it can be downright scary depending on the person. I think about our poor insurance salesman who couldn't handle our golden retriever. It was like, yes, I love dogs, and he's, backed up against the corner, and it was just like, it can be really intimidating.
Well, and, you know, when you have 9, I don't have 9 dogs anymore, but when you have 9 dogs, surely something in that group is going to tag a breed group that worries people. I think
Yes.
at the time I had 2 Doberman Pinschers and Terriers, like all the things, a Chihuahua, everything people are afraid of. So, you know, my evil horde. So I just taught them, if someone knocks,
Right.
if someone rings the doorbell, that means go to your crate. And it's funny, I don't answer the door right away. Like, if I was at the bathroom, you'd have to wait, like, because it's just, some things can't be hurried. So I think sometimes families are like, well, if the doorbell rings, I must immediately answer it. And I'm like, you don't actually have to. You can let them wait while you stow the dog so that the dog isn't sneaking out the door and jumping on a guest. Or I mean, I work with a lot of really sensitive dogs that's a dragon coming in the door. It's scary.
Right. Very scary for them. So I think what we're boiling down to here when it comes to barking dogs is I think it's important to understand why we're barking. If there's a real reason for the barking, then that needs to be addressed. If there's a possum in the tree or a burglar in the backyard, you kind of want the dog to bark and let you know. And then you can take care of the situation. So figure out why we're barking. If we're talking about nuisance barking, and especially with an adolescent, one of the things you need to think about is okay, why are we barking? You know, is this, are you trying to get attention? Are you overly tired? I mean, it's one of these things that my sister, who's an occupational therapist, the question we always ask is, have you had enough to eat? Have you had enough to sleep? Have you had enough exercise? What are the reasons you're barking that I can help you take care of? You know, maybe you do need a nap. Maybe you do need a snack. Maybe you really do need to get out and run around because it's been raining for 2 days and we haven't done that. So try and figure out the reason and address it. But also, too, it's okay to give your dog a bit of a time out when these things happen, because maybe that's what he really needs to reset. That maybe we're overstimulated and we need some quiet time to reset.
Absolutely. And I think helping them to understand when we're saying, okay, we're not actually doing that right now. Like that is not an appropriate answer on your flow chart in this particular moment. Right. And I do think to a certain extent, like, we're richly blessed that dogs divine it the great majority of the time. We don't actually teach it, but some dogs, probably the ones we view to be more problematic, perhaps need us to actually spell it out.
Right.
It's also important to understand that alarm barking is really addictive. So I don't think you can wait your way through it usually. At least not in my experience. I don't think you can ignore barking long enough to get it to go away.
Right. Right, I would agree. So it does have to be addressed in a certain way. And
I do sometimes just thank the dog and say, thank you. You're done.
Yes, I do
Not
too.
any more of that. Like, thank you for doing your job, that the trash can's in the wrong spot. I appreciate the feedback. Management has taken it under advisement.
Yeah.
Go do something else. Go chew on a bone.
You know, it's
right?
funny, but how many times that actually works? When I just sort of address it, I say, thank you. I didn't know.
Yes.
I had no idea that tree fell down in the woods, and I'm really grateful that you told me, and let's move on to something else. And I think sometimes it's weird. I know it sounds odd, but sometimes I feel like they just need the acknowledgement.
Yes, that something was important to them. I mean, if you think about it, Suzanne Clothier, I got to see her a year ago now. Somebody I've wanted to go in and see it at a seminar for a long time. I cannot highly enough recommend her. She's so much fun and smart lady.
Yes.
But she talked about, like, that we're kind of dumb, right? Like, we go on a walk with our dog. We do not smell the petrified frog. We don't pay any attention to the deer poop. Like, we're idiots from, a lot of perspectives. There are a lot of things that they perceive that we don't. And so I do wonder how much of it is the dog going, oh my God, you're blind. How do you not see the squirrel?
Yeah.
Right? I do think sometimes the dogs are barking because there is something that it's not as important to us. And so we just don't perceive it. So I think thanking them, like, your first bark's free.
Right. So I think that is true. So, start off with thanking your dog, and you might be surprised. That might just be exactly what they need. So
and tell them they're good. Like, good
Yeah,
dog.
good dog.
Thank you for letting me
Yay.
know.
I appreciate that. So, all right. Well, great, Tina. And we will see you all next time on Your Family Dog.
Thanks for listening to Your Family Dog. Got questions? Interesting ideas? Visit www.yourfamilydogpodcast.com to share your thoughts.